Born in 1887 in Boston, Massachusetts, Evelyn Aldridge was the only child of industrialist Charles H. Aldridge, whose immense fortune came from steel manufacturing in Pittsburgh. By the time of his death in 1905, his estate, valued at $45 million, around $1.2 billion today, made Evelyn one of the wealthiest young women in America. At the age of 21, in late 1908, Evelyn shocked society by formally renouncing her inheritance. She signed a legally binding document declaring that she had no interest in the Aldridge family fortune. Instead, she directed the majority of her assets into several philanthropic foundations in the Midwest and funded scholarship programs for rural students. Her decision made national headlines. Newspapers described it as the most daring rejection of wealth in modern history. Social commentators debated her motives. Some attributed the act to her progressive ideals, while others suspected rebellion against privilege. Evelyn's gesture sent immediate cultural shockwaves. Progressive journals celebrated her as a symbol of moral integrity, calling her America's first modern philanthropist. Critics, however, dismissed her decision as an elaborate publicity stunt. Regardless, her actions sparked a nationwide conversation about the moral responsibilities of wealth. Inspired by her example, several universities introduced unprecedented anti-legacy scholarships that intentionally prioritize students without family wealth or connections. After giving up her fortune, Evelyn relocated to rural Vermont in 1910. She settled in a small farmhouse without servants or luxuries, raising goats, tending a garden, and teaching music at the local school. Though she avoided the spotlight, she maintained private correspondence under a pseudonym with several progressive educators, advocating for equal access to the arts. On August 12, 1928, Evelyn wrote a letter to her longtime friend, the artist Margaret Hayes, in which she confessed, "I tire of the simplest life, even as it grants clarity, a clarity too heavy to bear." That was the last verified record of her existence. On September 3, 1928, Evelyn's neighbors discovered her home abandoned. An unfinished meal on the kitchen table, her goats wandering freely in the barn, and personal belongings left behind. Alarmed, they contacted Sheriff Thomas J. Carter. A large-scale search began, involving local volunteers, state troopers, and private investigators. Despite weeks of intensive efforts, no signs of struggle or forced entry were ever found. Her possessions remained largely undisturbed. Evelyn's disappearance dominated national headlines. The New York Times questioned, did Evelyn return to the world she rejected? Was she escaping inner turmoil? Or did she vanish by choice? Private investigators pursued reported sightings across Vermont, New Hampshire, and even Canada, but no credible leads emerged. In philanthropic circles, her absence was deeply felt. Evelyn's life and sudden disappearance became a cautionary tale, an emblem of how voluntary simplicity could drift into isolation and mystery. In June 1931, after nearly 3 years of fruitless investigation, officials declared Evelyn Aldridge legally deceased. Her body was never found, and the case remains officially unresolved to this day. Evelyn's story continued to captivate the public imagination. In 1955, historian Dr. Lydia Monroe published The Heiress Who Vanished, exploring Evelyn's philosophical motivations and the fine line between voluntary retreat and erasure from society. By the 1980s, Evelyn had become a cult figure among advocates of minimalist living and off-grid lifestyles. Several documentaries referred to her as a pioneer of rejecting consumerist norms. In 1998, the forested area near her former Vermont farmhouse was officially designated Aldridge Woods, commemorating both her life and the unanswered questions surrounding her disappearance. Today, Evelyn's story continues to inspire debate among scholars and sociologists. Some view her decision as an early form of burnout recovery, while others argue that her renunciation represented a performative act that ultimately consumed her sense of identity. Still, many see her as a cautionary figure, a reminder of the potential cost of radical idealism and the fragile balance between personal freedom and social connection. Despite nearly a century of speculation, the mystery endures. Evelyn Aldridge's fate remains unknown, but her story forces us to ask, when one gives up everything, does one risk vanishing, not just from wealth, but from the world itself? If this story shocked you, there's more. Our Rise and Fall series exposes the truth behind the biggest names in tech, money, and media. Subscribe to never miss the next twist.